Let me take you back about 15 years. I was sitting in graduate school surrounded by books, theories, and global debates when my professor assigned us a paper with a simple question: is foreign aid good or bad? At the time, I thought, what a strange question. Aid has saved lives, aid had rebuilt countries, aid had helped nations like mine survive the war, you know, disease and disaster. But that assignment forced us to do something rare. It forced us not to accept easy answer. And as you know, for a university that actually wants you to think and rethink, this was something that we had to do. We studied history, we compared countries, we reflected, we examined unintended consequences, and we had to ask a harder question. What happens after aid ends? I did not know then that 15 years after or 15 years later, I would not just be writing about aid as I did in graduate school, I would also be designing aid programs, managing them, and living with their outcomes. And today, something important is happening. The global conversation has changed, and Liberia must now decide how it is going to respond. Let's talk about the global shift because it's real and it's already happening. Across the world, the message from international partners is increasingly clear. The era of traditional aid is changing. Budgets are shrinking. Development agencies are restructuring. Humanitarian aid is being reserved for emergencies. At the same time, another message is rising. Countries must produce, build skills, and trade. This is not a new message, but it has been re emphasized in a different way, with actions of international organizations actually closing down and leaving. This shift is not targeted at Africa or Liberia in any kind of bad way. It is not a punishment, it is not abandonment. It is a global economic reality. The world is organizing itself around productivity, competitiveness, value creation, resilience. And countries that do not adapt risk being left behind. So the question before Liberia is not, do we like this shift? The real question is, do we prepare for it or do we wait until we are forced? Global data already tells us where the world is heading. Aid for trade is rising. Traditional humanitarian aid is becoming more constrained. Why? Because the donors, development partners now understand something crucial. Aid stabilizes countries, trade sustains them. The world has made its choice. Liberia must now decide how it responds. But Liberian skepticism is understandable, really. Let me say it clearly. Liberians are not wrong to be skeptical about this shift. Aid has been part of our survival story. Aid helped us through civil war. Aid helped us through Ebola. Aid helped us through COVID-19. Aid helped in when institutions were weak. So when people ask, what happens to the poor? What happens to health, education, food security? Those are really serious and valid questions. Those are not foolish questions. But here is the truth we must face honestly. Aid was never designed to build long-term prosperity. Aid is designed to respond, and trade is designed to sustain. When we confuse those two roles, responding and sustaining, we remain stuck. What the data and experience tells us, Liberia has received significant aid for decades. In some years after the war, aid inflows represented a very large share of our economy. Aid has been a lifeline. And yet, after decades of assistance, we still have high unemployment rate, we low on manufacturing is very limited, and aid still finances core services. Aid has saved lives, but it did not build a self-sustaining economy. I remember when I traveled to the United Kingdom when I was just 17 as part of the global call to action against poverty. And we were advocating for more aid because we really needed that, and to reduce the debt of poor countries and to make trade fair. And this was a big campaign. People came from all over the world, and I had the opportunity to go there. So I know what aid has done, and I know where we are now and why we are having this conversation. But this is not a moral failure on our part that we shouldn't have accepted aid when we needed it. It is a design limitation. Aid funds projects, trade builds industries. Industries that will reinvest, create products and money into the economy, and our economy will be working where we utilize our land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. We know that aid definitely fills gaps, but trade builds the engine that will take us a long way. So, what aid to trade really means and what it does not mean. I like to be very simple, so I like to present to you this very simple framework. When I look at the two words, just aid alone, AID, and I look at trade and I just take the ADE portion of trade to compare with AID, I can see that I and E are the two letters that are different within aid, and when you compare it with ADE in trade. That I in aid for me is intervention, and the E is exchange. So I, as an intervention, someone steps in, someone provides, someone solves your problem. Intervention is essential in emergencies, vaccines, disaster relief, humanitarian response. These save lives, but intervention is temporary by design. The E in trade, and especially the ADE part in comparison with AID, is exchange. Two sides bring value, both give and receive, both benefits. Exchange requires skills, it requires products, quality, accountability, and exchange builds dignity. Liberia's history has been shaped largely by intervention. The world is now asking us to strengthen exchange, not because intervention was wrong, but because it was never meant to be permanent. Let's clear the biggest misunderstanding. Aid to trade does not mean cutting off support overnight, abandoning vulnerable people, ignoring humanitarian crisis. Aid will always be needed in emergencies. Aid to trade does mean redirecting support to build productive capacity, strengthening systems instead of replacing them, investing in skills, businesses, and institutions, preparing citizens to earn, not only receive. Aid stabilizes a moment, trade sustains a future. Why Liberia's current model is not enough? After decades of aid, if you agree with me, our reality remains familiar. We are still not getting to utilize our raw materials into finished products. We are relying heavily on external financing. We struggle to create enough jobs. This is not because Liberians lack intelligence, creativity, or ambition. It is because aid filled gaps but rarely built engines. And this reminds me also about when I was in graduate school and we were dealing with democracy and development. We were looking at whether democracy leads to development, and people argue that, oh, democracy is good, But when it leads to development, it's only when you apply the economic mechanism. So we want to deal with both because we know they all have both values. But when we neglect the part that actually need to create the jobs that we need, we wouldn't get to where we want to go. So balancing is really big in these things. What aid to trade looks like in practice. Let me make this concrete. Agriculture, for example, in the old model, someone donated rice to us. In the new model, we need better seeds, processing facilities, packaging, branding, market access. The same farmer, but completely different outcome. Education. Our experts, local experts don't produce the products that we need. We hire people externally to do it for us. Under the new model, we still engage with external, but we also use our Liberian design platforms, our tools and products. Knowledge that can be sold locally and also regionally. Education becomes both development and export. Health. Endlessly, we import health supplies. We need to start looking at the local manufacturing of basic health items and those who are creating something that we need to work with. Clinics in neighboring countries buying locally. That is sustainability. Youth and technology. The old model, workshops and stipends were so important to us. Yes, we needed it because we needed to at least build certain capabilities along the way. That's fine. But under the new model of exchange, skills linked directly to markets, youth earning through digital services, through creative industries and tech. This is already happening, but just not at scale. And this is the reason why when we see a new entrepreneur enter into the market with a great idea and you are rendering a service to solve a particular problem in that industry, people in service and those producing should then work together, because the biggest thing we want to do is to solve the problem and not, it is complementary, and that's how we need to see it. Why this shift is actually good for Liberians? When done right, aid to trade delivers jobs instead of handouts, skills instead of dependency, income instead of allowances, confidence instead of waiting, dignity instead of charity. People do not want to receive forever, and I hope that saying that charity begins at home can also be applied. People do not want to receive forever, they want to contribute. Dignity is one of the most powerful and underestimated forces in development. And if we must achieve this, policy must catch up with reality. So if Liberia really want to do this, the policy must follow. We must support local productions, invest in quality and standards, build trade, enabling infrastructure, align education with the economy we want. Treat aid as a temporary accelerator. Aid should prepare people to exit aid. If it does not, then we must question its design. The choice is before us. And I repeat, 15 years ago, my university, very good one, asked me whether foreign aid was good or bad. I understand that question now. Aid is good, but insufficient. Aid is intervention, trade is exchange. And no nation builds dignity, stability, or pride on intervention alone. The world is not turning its back on Liberia. It is asking Liberia to step forward. Aid helped us survive. Trade will help us thrive. The question is not whether the world is shifting. The question is whether we move with confidence or we are dragged by necessity. Liberia is capable. Liberians are capable. And it is time our policies reflect that truth and our actions and what we do as individuals to support this. Aid was our past. Trade is our future. I thank you.